I almost didn't open the door. The knock was 3 taps, soft, deliberate, spaced evenly. Not the random pounding of someone panicking, not the frantic scratching I'd imagined in my worst moments lying awake in the dark. 3 even knocks, like someone who'd learned long ago that noise was a currency you spent carefully. I pressed my back against the wall beside the door and listened for 30 seconds. Then a voice, low, male. "We saw your candlelight 2 nights ago. We've been watching the building since then. You're not infected. We need to talk." I didn't answer. Another voice, younger, quieter, coming from a slightly different angle, which meant there were at least 2 of them, and they positioned themselves on either side of the door. "We know you went outside yesterday morning. You walked south on 8th. You went as far as the old parking structure and came back. We followed your route after you returned." I felt the cold move through me. They'd been watching me, mapping my movements, studying me, the way I'd been studying the empty city, methodically, patiently, without announcing themselves. That wasn't the behavior of desperate people. That was the behavior of people who had survived something worse than this. I opened the door. The man was somewhere in his mid-40s, medium height, built like someone who'd been strong once and had refined that strength into something leaner and more efficient. Dark jacket, worn at the elbows, a pack that sat on his back with the settled comfort of something carried for a very long time. His eyes were the first thing I noticed. Pale gray, steady, scanning me from head to foot and back again in the half-second before his expression settled into something carefully neutral. He didn't extend a hand. The girl beside him was maybe 17, dark hair pulled back, smaller than him, but with a stillness in her posture that didn't belong to her age. The kind of stillness that gets trained into you by circumstances you don't choose. She was looking at me the way you look at something you're not sure you trust yet, but are willing to study further. Neither of them smiled. I respected that. I let them inside. The man did a slow circuit of the apartment before he spoke again, checking the windows, the bedroom, the bathroom, the closet. Not paranoid, procedural. The habit of someone who would learn not to take a space at face value. When he finished, he stood in the center of the room and looked at me directly. "How long have you been outside?" "Moving around, I mean, not staying put." "Started going out on day 2, I said. Short radius at first. Extended it on day 4. "Where's Zone 7 from?" 8 blocks north. He and the girl exchanged a look. Brief. The compressed communication of people who'd been together long enough to have a private language. "You went north," he said. It wasn't the question. "Day 4. Close to the perimeter." "How close?" I stood at the gap in the barricade, looked through. The girl spoke for the first time, and nothing came toward you. It wasn't phrased as a question either. She said it the way you state something you're already confirming. "There was movement in the street north of the barrier," I said. "Something crossed an intersection. It didn't come toward me." Silence. The man sat down slowly in the chair across from me. He set his pack on the floor beside his feet, folded his hands, looked at them for a moment. "My name is Joel," he said. "That's Ellie." "Ethan." He nodded once. "Okay, Ethan. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think about the answer before you give it. Not just say what comes first." He looked up. "In the 8 days since this city went dark, how many times have you been in direct proximity to one of them?" I counted in my head. Zone 7 barricade. The 3 shapes moving below my window. The stairwell sounds on day 7. 3 separate incidents, I said. Direct proximity. None of them engaged. Ellie sat down on the edge of the couch. She was watching my face the way you watch a screen, looking for information in the details. "None of them," Joel repeated quietly. "Not one." "No." He was quiet for a long moment. "I've been moving through quarantine zones for a while now," he said finally. "Different city, different origin event. Some things are consistent wherever you go." He paused. "One of those consistent things is that in high-density zones, places where the spread has been active for more than 48 hours, a person cannot move through open territory without engagement. Not for 8 days. Not for 8 hours." Another pause. "Not unless something's different about that person." The apartment felt smaller than it had a moment ago. "Different how?" I asked. Joel looked at Ellie. She gave a small, almost imperceptible shrug that seemed to mean your call. He looked back at me. "We don't know yet," he said. "That's why we knocked. We moved at dusk." Joel's reasoning was sound. Low light conditions reduced visual range for anything using conventional sight, and the fog, which still hadn't lifted, provided additional cover. We moved in a formation he established without discussion. Him at the front, Ellie in the middle, me at the rear. Spaced enough that one incident wouldn't catch all 3 of us, but close enough to maintain visual contact. He moved through the city the way water moves through rock, finding the path of least resistance, never forcing. Left at the pharmacy, right through the parking structure, cutting north along the alley behind the old hotel. I followed and watched him and tried to understand what 8 days of this had looked like before today alone. With only the notebook and the radio and the particular discipline of a person who has decided that surviving is worth the work it requires, it had looked manageable. Now, behind two people who clearly knew things I didn't, it looked different. It looked like I'd been very lucky. The fog was thickest near the intersection of 9th and Meridian. We stopped at the corner, and Joel held up a fist. Military signal, universal enough that I knew it meant halt. I stopped. Ellie stopped. Silence. Then, from somewhere east, that sound, the one I'd cataloged now across multiple days. The pressure change, the displacement of air by something large moving too smoothly. Joel's hand moved to the wall beside him, steadying. Ellie didn't move at all. From the fog at the far end of the intersection, two shapes materialized. Slow, deliberate. They crossed the mouth of the street from south to north, moving in that fluid, purposeful way that had nothing random in it. At the midpoint of the crossing, one of them stopped, turned, faced our direction. I felt Joel tense in my peripheral vision, felt Ellie's breath go shallow. The shape at the end of the street was still. Whatever it was doing, processing, assessing, deciding, it was doing it across 50 feet of fog and silence, and it was doing it while looking directly at us. Then it turned away, continued north. Both shapes disappeared into the fog. Gone. I exhaled. Joel didn't. He was looking at me, not at the intersection, not at where the shapes had gone, at me, with an expression I hadn't seen on his face before, something between calculation and something that I might have called in another context, fear. Ellie was looking at me too. It saw us, quietly. All three of us. Yes, I said, but it turned away. Yes. She looked at Joel. He was still watching me with that expression. Then he looked at the empty fog where the shapes had crossed and back at me again. They've done this before, he said. His voice was very even. Every other time, in every other zone, the moment there's a sighting at range, they close. Always, without exception. He stopped. Ellie finished his sentence. They're not ignoring you. She held my gaze. They're following you. We didn't speak again until we were inside. Door locked, curtains drawn. Joel sat at the table with his hands flat on the surface and stared at the middle distance for a long time. Ellie opened her bag and removed a small battered journal. She began writing in it without explaining why. I sat with my own notebook and looked at the last line I'd written before they knocked. Something is climbing the stairs. I crossed it out, wrote something new underneath. They know exactly where I am. They have been following me for 8 days. And today, for the first time, I think I understand why that's not a threat. It's something worse. It's an invitation.